As tensions rise along the international border and the line of control with Pakistan, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has told reporters this evening that everything will be fine soon. He did not elaborate. The PM's first comments on the ceasefire violations came on a day when 2 more civilians were killed in Pakistani shelling in Samba, both women. Government sources say the Prime Minister has left the task of handling the situation to a team led by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. But he's given them a message that India will not buckle under blackmail and will not be forced into dialogue under duress. Government officials say Pakistan is upping the ante to divert attention from their own internal situation and testing the Modi government's resolve. The forces have been told that no border flag meetings will take place until the firing from the other side stops. My colleague Sudhir Ranjan Sen joins us live now from the Arispura sector along the international border, which is one of the areas where there has been intermittent firing and shelling going on. Sudhir, it's a very difficult situation for the locals there because people obviously now who live in these border villages are very, very afraid, and there were 2 women who died this morning while they were on their way somewhere.
Well, yes, Nidhi, that's the case. In Samba, what I've been able to gather is these 2 women who were killed, they were actually traveling in a tonga when they were hit by shells from across Pakistan. Also, people out here, both the villagers and those, BSF and other intelligence agencies are saying that they see some kind of a new trend. In the sense, the shelling all of a sudden starts between 8 to 10, which is very busy. People moving around, because this is not the time generally you find shelling. It's generally at night that we have seen all along that shelling happens, or cross-border firing happens. And for that, people more or less, fall back. They are more or less resilient to it. They know how to deal with that. But firing in the morning is something that, it's very, very new to this area, because most of the people are out taking care of their cattle, out tending to the fields, and that is when they are getting killed. We've been to a village called Abdulia, which is, just on the border. There is one BSF outpost, Nidhi, that is there. And the scene that we saw out there, that every evening people leave that village, fall back about 10 to 12 kilometers away from the Pakistani guns, the range of the Pakistani guns, and every morning they are going back. And also, this crisis is playing out at several levels. One, and that's the most important one, people do not have enough fodder for their cattle. Mind you, cattle is very, very important out here. Selling milk is one of the main sources of livelihood. So a huge amount of crisis, not only because people having to leave their homes and come back, or people, living under the constant fear of shelling and firing, but at the economic level also, it is hitting.
Right.
Nidhi.
Well, so there's certainly a lot of concern there, and as you said, much of this shelling actually begins at night, so do be careful out there yourself. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Well, so many developments today, the most significant being that India has toughened its position vis-a-vis Pakistan, and the question then is whether this ceasefire, which many have described as the biggest confidence-building measure between the 2 countries all these years, for more than 10 years now, whether that ceasefire itself is now in the danger of collapsing altogether. There'll be huge repercussions if that does happen. General V.P. Malik, the former Chief of Army Staff, joins us tonight from Chandigarh. Mr. K.C. Singh, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, whose specialization was counter-terrorism. Mr. Sudhindra Kulkarni, columnist and author, someone who's been actively involved in the Track 2 process and dialogue with Pakistan. Sambit Patra, spokesperson of the BJP, is with us tonight. And well-known Pakistani political analyst Musharraf Zaidi joins us this evening from Islamabad. General Malik, to you first, sir. Do you believe that the Indian forces and India politically is handling the situation in the best way possible? As a former army chief, how do you feel about the fact that we are now saying we will not even have flag meetings until the firing stops?
Nidhi, what has happened this time is way beyond the usual infiltration that takes place during these months every year. There is a game which is being played to internationalize the problem of J&K, to draw attention in the international community on J&K. There is also this problem of domestic problem that the Pakistan faces, and they are trying to draw attention away from that. And all the stakeholders in Pakistan are together on Kashmir. And third, I think the problem is this time they are trying to put pressure on India. Generally, such things, when they take place, there is a dialogue which takes place either at the post level or at the DGMO level, and things can be controlled. But this time what is happening is, and that is the impression in India, that there is a pistol kept on the head. Now, if you try and seek dialogue by keeping a pistol on your adversary's head, then the adversary will not respond the way you want it. Then the other person will also try to hit back. And that is what is happening. It is unfortunate, and I know that area very well. You will have large number of casualties on either side, civilian casualties, because people are living and people are farming right up to the border, international border. But then, if you try and keep the pistol on the Indian's head and you insist on talking under that kind of a pressure, then you will have the response which is taking place now.
The question then is, how does one de-escalate from here? And I'll just bring in Ambassador KC Singh on that first. That what we're hearing from government officials in India today is one, I think what General Malik in a sense echoed, is that India will not be forced into any dialogue under duress. And that the reasoning for why this is happening as far as India is concerned is A, because they believe Pakistan is trying to divert attention from its own internal problems and to test the new government's resolve. Is that, you think, a fair assessment of why this is happening, or do you see any other reason?
No, I think let's take it from the time the new government took over. They invited the Pakistani Prime Minister with the other leaders, and then the foreign secretaries were supposed to meet. But before the foreign secretaries met, already there was ceasefire violations taking place in August. Although government of India chose a different reason to call off the talks, but certainly one of the motivating factors was that if the army, Pakistani army is acting like that on the border, that means they're not listening to the civilian government. Therefore, there was no point talking to the civilian government. So that's a determination the government made in August, which was then clarified by Prime Minister when he went to New York in response to Nawaz Sharif ratcheting it up, going back to the plebiscite resolution, putting Kashmir up front and everything, etc. Prime Minister simply said, we will not talk till the conditions are conducive for talks, and you have to make the conditions. Now, where does that leave Pakistan? The file is with the Pakistani army. Pakistani army, in any case, has multiple reasons why they would be doing it. One is, of course, the usual one of infiltration, but that doesn't apply if the firing is early morning and targeting civilians. Yeah. That is not infiltration. It may be a coincidence, but we got 2 US senators in town today. We have the head of the Asia subcommittee of the UN Foreign Relations thing, and 2 senators are here, and they're going to Pakistan after that. So normally in the past we've seen there would be incidents when high-level US visits were here. But above all, I think the Pakistani army is saying, all right, you say you will not discuss Kashmir and you've got new red lines, which is the Modi doctrine. Then they said, we will ratchet it up by increasing the cost of the border, internationalizing it, and making the international community get up and say what's going on there. And UN Secretary General has twice remarked about it. He remarked,
and therefore you force India's hand on the issue.
So they are saying that you cannot decide to redraw the red lines. We can ratchet it up and dissolve your red lines and force you to the table.
Okay, so Musharraf Zaidi, how do you see it? What is the view from Pakistan tonight? Musharraf Zaidi, you've heard the Indian perspective and what the establishment here thinks. Give us a sense of what's going on there.
Nidhi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to sort of share my own perspective on this. I've been talking to friends in the Indian media this is the 3rd consecutive day. On the first day, there was no coverage at all of this on the Pakistan side because, as I've said so many times, the Pakistan-India relationship, the Kashmir dispute, the LOC situation, all of these things are really, they're secondary and tertiary level issues for the Pakistani discourse. That doesn't mean India is not important. It just means that our domestic issues and the range of our domestic issues is so rich that really there's very little time for the mass media and for the Pakistani discourse to pay attention to what's going on with India. And I think oftentimes that's a good thing, but sometimes it's a bad thing. In the last 24 hours, we've seen a ratcheting up of the discourse here as well. There's been now video reports, just like your correspondent was reporting from the Indian side of the border. I know of at least 2 channels that have sent reporters to the border, and they've filed video reports. So we've seen some of the visuals of the damage, and the Pakistani side claims that there's been 7 casualties, 7 civilian fatalities. The Indian side now claims that in the last 3 days alone, there's been 8. The Pakistani side claims that India has violated the LOC and the working boundary over 220 times. I think it's 227 times in 2014 alone. Now, the heating up of the border is something that it's not new. It's not just the Modi government. It goes back to the beginning of 2013. You remember, I think on your show as well, we had a chance to discuss the very unfortunate, sort of allegations and counter allegations of beheadings. We had the situation with the prisoners, the prisoner in India, the Pakistani prisoner in India.
Now we have a situation where you have civilians dying, and like you said, both countries now are seeing a situation where villagers on both sides, are dying, and that is a very worrisome situation. It takes it to a whole different level. Now, in your assessment, then, why has that stepped up to that scale? What's going on? What is the military establishment in Pakistan thinking?
My honest assessment is that I cannot imagine in any rational framework that this makes sense for Pakistan to light this fire, because it's a fire that we don't have the resources and the energy to handle. We have a full-scale war going on the other side of the border with the TTP. As you know, since June, we've been in this mini war with the Zarb-e-Azb operation. We have a massive political conflict in Islamabad between the Imran Khan's followers and the government. We have the economy. It's nowhere near as well doing as well as the Indian economy. And every overture that this Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, has made in terms of normalization with India seems to be sputtering. Seems to be not quite getting the traction that we had hoped. Many of us, those in the pro-normalization camp in Pakistan, had hoped it would have had. The Hurriyat meeting between Ambassador or High Commissioner Basit and the Hurriyat leadership, and the subsequent cancelling of the Foreign Secretary talks, sort of poured cold water on a lot of ambitions here. And then the fact that, in New York at the UNGA.
That traction that Nawaz Sharif is seeking, for instance, for his peace overtures, he's not getting that from his own army in Pakistan. I mean, I think, India is another story. I'll just come back to you, though. I want to ask Sudhindra Kulkarni for his analysis on this, because, Mr. Kulkarni, you travel to Pakistan a lot. You're able to interact there with civil society and other members of the establishment. What is your assessment of this? And therefore, how do we de-escalate tensions? Because this can get out of hand, and it's important to de-escalate. Mr. Kulkarni.
Every nation has a right to defend itself. But what's happening on the border between India and Pakistan now is truly worrisome. The important question is not who violated it first, although it's important, but secondarily. Most important is that tension must not be escalated further, because if it collapses, the consequences could be quite unpredictable, and they're not good for either India or Pakistan. We must realize, both on the Indian side, Pakistani side, that war is not the solution to any of the problems. We've had 4 full-blown wars. There has also been a cross-border terrorism, a proxy war by Pakistan, which, as our Pakistani friend on the panel said, it has actually boomeranged, and Pakistan is having to fight its own battle against terrorism. So both countries must now sit together. The answer to violation of ceasefire is cease fire. Firing must stop and talks must begin. It's unfortunate that the 2 prime ministers could not have bilateral talks on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session last month. Next month, there is going to be a SAARC summit in Nepal. And if the 2 prime ministers don't talk again on the sidelines of the SAARC summit, it will be truly unfortunate. Talks is diplomacy, dialogue is the only answer. You showed the plight of Indian civilians, because of the firing from the Pakistani side. The Pakistani channels would be showing the same that's happening to the Pakistani civilians. Now, the 2 civilians on the 2 sides, don't they have a right to live in peace?
But Mr. Kulkarni, are you saying then that this decision to even cease flag meetings until the firing stops, do you think that's flawed? or some would say it's a different approach, it's a much tougher approach, and maybe we need to try something different, because in the past we've seen this cycle of violations. We keep having flag meetings and we fall into that trap every time. Now, do you think that this is the right approach right now, maybe in the short term, or do you think that it's flawed?
Even after the so-called tough approach, the government has to come back to the track of talks. And the sooner we come back to the track of talks, it's better for India, better for Pakistan, because there is a huge benefit to be had for both India and Pakistan by intensifying the normalization process. We can't live forever in a condition of tension, hostility. How long can this go on? It's time for us to show some foresight.
Okay, I'll take
It's not the time to blame each other.
I'm going to take that to the BJP spokesperson. Sambit, you heard what Sudhindra Kulkarni was saying. And there is a warning here from people who watched the relations between the two countries of this getting out of hand. And if you hear what the Prime Minister said today, actually it sounded, he didn't say much, but he seemed to be calming things, bringing the temperature down a notch by saying everything will be fine soon. So Sambit, how does the BJP look at this? Is there a concern that this could, go out of control if it isn't controlled now?
Nidhi, first and foremost, Sudhindra mentioned that there should be talks on the sideline. But our concern is, how can you talk on the sidelines when the highway is on fire? So today the highway is on fire, so the fire has to be doused first. And it's not for the first time that the highway has caught fire. It's umpteen number of times, and there are official records also. 22nd July 2014, the Defence Minister Arun Jaitley ji was replying to a question in Rajya Sabha, and he says that 2004 to 2013, there had been 347 instances of violations along the line of control and international border. So it is not a phenomena which is new. It is something which the Pakistani dispensation has not learned all this way as to how it should behave if it really wants talk. Who does not want talk? If you would remember, Indian Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi on the floors of UNGA categorically began his speech by saying that we want to coexist in peace. There should be peaceful coexistence between the neighbors, and we had offered the fig leaf to them by inviting them the very first day in the swearing-in ceremony, saying that come, let's have a good relationship hereforth. Forget whatever has happened in the past. But what did they do? They resolved to what they had been doing in the past, backstabbing. They went to have a talk with the Hurriyat leaders, and you would see a confusion in the Pakistani dispensation. The big question that I would bring in over here is, look at the body language and the confusion that you can see in Pakistan, and you can see a kind of stability and a resolve in India. Both the things are in contrast to each other.